Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
It's Wednesday. It's the Ask Me Anything episode of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Episode number 295, I believe, which means that we're just a couple of weeks away from that episode 300, the launch of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio version 4.0. But because today is Wednesday, and as I've been doing pretty much every episode, I will begin with announcements and just a reminder that there will not be a show this Friday. I will be traveling to Colorado for the Libertarian Party of Colorado State Convention. There's a debate happening on Saturday evening, but because of airfares, I am getting there Friday, and I'm leaving almost immediately after the debate, so I'll be back early in the morning on Sunday, catching a red-eye from Denver to Boston. So there will be a Monday show, and actually next week, because of the way things are happening, there will be a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday show next week. And, you know, I was reminded of something earlier today that apparently the clocks wind up changing this weekend. So since there's no Friday show, I will remind you of that right now. That is, unless you're listening to this sometime after March the 16th, or rather March the 13th, in which case don't change your clocks unless it's in the fall, and then, you know, it might be time to change. But, you know, it's a timely reminder that the clocks wind up changing, and daylight shifting time is something that just needs to completely go away. And speaking of shifting and time, there will be some time zone changes for me on my travels, but also for some weird reason, somehow I missed, and I don't know how this connects to time shifting, but maybe someone was time shifting when they posted a question on the Facebook page for Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, and I did not see it until just a couple of days ago. But the question was asked back in January, so apologies on the very delayed response. And this is a more lighthearted question, but, you know, I love those lighthearted questions every now and then. The question is, why does cat poo smell so incredibly awful? And, well, I'm glad you asked, because I've never really thought of it until reading the question, and then I was like, you know what? Yeah, cat poo generally does smell awful. And apparently, the reason that cat poo smells awful is the same reason that your poo may or may not smell awful. And the answer comes from Dr. Mike Paul, who is writing at PetHealthNetwork.com. He says, while stools do not normally have a pleasant smell, sometimes a stool or feces can smell extremely strong and putrid. The cause for foul-smelling stools in cats or humans can be very similar. It can be because of the food that is eaten, the bacteria in the colon, and on occasion, serious health problems. Additionally, diarrhea and the presence of excess gas can cause bad odors. He then goes into specifics on cats. He says many feline disorders are accompanied by diarrhea and foul-smelling stools. In most cases, the condition will be temporary, either self-resolving or readily remedied with a change of diet. And then there are a couple of things that he talks about here, specifically diet, which I believe is probably the biggest factor for most humans and probably plays a factor in a lot of cats. So let me just talk about the diet aspect here real quick, and I will post this link in the show notes so that you can read everything that he has to say. But regarding diet, he says, since people often vary their cat's diet, it is sometimes difficult to determine what food ingredient is the offending agent. Sometimes an elimination diet, avoid one ingredient at a time for a week or so, may help narrow down the cause. Some cats are hunters, and their prey can also cause smelly stools. Imagine your cat eating bugs, rodents, and small reptiles, and the smell may not be such a mystery after all. Yummy, yummy. Surprisingly, vitamin supplements can also produce smelly stools. There are very few reasons to use vitamin and mineral supplements in cats, and today's cat foods are well balanced, so pet parents are more likely to cause problems by supplementing cat food. And then he says, editor's note, never add any sort of vitamin supplement to your cat's food without first talking to a veterinarian. So the long and short of it is, your cat's poo smells for the same reason that your poo smells. And again, I will post this link in the show notes. Let me now change over to something a little more serious, and that would be military bases. Why military bases? Well, because I've got a question about military bases. And the question is, are military bases supposed to have fences on their property? Over 50 bikers lost their bikes for riding on trails that were unmarked outside of San Diego. Thanks. And let me actually stop that audio. I pulled up a news story from NBC San Diego, and, well, let me first read this news story before I answer the question. The news, again, from NBC San Diego says dozens of people caught riding on U.S. Marine property just east of San Diego had their bikes confiscated over the weekend, and the date on this is, I'm not seeing a date on this, but it was fairly recently. Looking down at the comments are from January of this year, so a couple of months ago. The story continues. It says, the riders did not know that the area was off limits. Brady Imberger was with friends on Sunday, and again, it was a Sunday in mid-January, riding his bike through a Sycamore Canyon Preserve trail like he'd done dozens of times before. This time, however, there was trouble. Imberger and his friends were detained, ticketed, and had their bikes confiscated because they unknowingly rode onto federal land, specifically Marine-based property in Miramar. Imberger and he said that armed officers detained people in the group and slapped each one with a $500 citation. He said, we're kind of confused because the trails that we came into in Sycamore Canyon, they had no sign saying we're entering government property where we came in. Then authorities escorted them off the land and confiscated their bicycles, leaving them to hike a couple of miles to the nearest roadway where some friends could pick them up. This is sadly not the first time this has happened. The San Diego Mountain Biking Association issued a warning saying authorities had begun enforcing trespassing. The warning said 15 mountain bikers had recently had their bikes confiscated. In actuality, military officials said they confiscated more than 45. There's more to this, plus the answer to the question when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Why do they hate us? Is libertarianism compatible with Islam? Davi Barker answers these questions and more in Voluntary Islam and Other Essays. He advances the voluntarist cause with analysis of the confluence of values between Islam and libertarianism, as well as contemporary movements from the Tea Party to the Arab Spring. Voluntary Islam by Davi Barker is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
So before I jump back into answering this question, I want to make sure that I tell you about the fine people over at Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Since 1977, Roberts & Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing and on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760 or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's 800-874-9760 or online at rrbi.co. Back into the story now from San Diego, where about 45 people, at least on one particular weekend in January, had their bicycles confiscated for riding on a trail through a canyon that apparently went onto federal property, specifically the Marine base in Miramar. And, well, they said they had no clue that they were on federal property, specifically on a military base. The article, or rather the news story here from NBC San Diego continues, and I want to finish this story before I answer the question. So, one of the guys that was arrested by the name of Brady Imberger, or Imberger, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. He warned people, make sure you stay clear of this area so you don't have to go through what we went through. Meanwhile, he is among a number of mountain bikers who must appear in court and pay the fine in order to get their bikes back. In a statement, the MCAS Miramar, that's the military something, I don't know what MCAS stands for, but the Marine Corps something another. They put out a statement that says MCAS Miramar has diligently worked in alerting the community of off-limit areas and have posted signs and warnings across government property to further increase awareness. Similarly, military police officers patrol the area regularly. A Miramar spokesman went on to state that officials confiscated 45 bikes and 3 motorcycles over that particular weekend, which will be returned once the defendants' cases are resolved. So basically what you have here, and I just want to throw this out before I finish the article, what you have here is the government taking property and saying, we'll give you your property back once you give us money. Tell me how that's not extortion. Please, I want someone to please tell me how that is not extortion. Because if I walked over to your house and I took your bicycle and said, yeah, I'll give it back to you once you give me $500, that would be considered either theft or extortion or both. Government does it, and apparently it's okay because, well, you broke a rule that you didn't know you were violating because there were no signs and the place was not fenced off. So that goes back to the question of, are there requirements to have fences or some sort of property demarcations? Let me continue the article. There's one more paragraph here with part of a statement from, I believe, the Marine Corps Miramar base officials. They say it is imperative that anyone who bikes on the eastern border of the base understand that this is part of an active military training area. We have and will continue to work with community organizations such as the San Diego Mountain Biking Association to help educate and deter people from coming onto these bases illegally. So, the question that was asked, and I'll read this one more time. Question that was asked, are military bases to have fences on their property? And so I did a search, and what I found was a military publication from 1993 that appears to be the most recent version of this publication, titled Security of Unclassified Army Property, Sensitive and Non-Sensitive. And they have 3 levels. There's Threat Level 1, Threat Level 2, and Threat Level 3. And based on my reading, and I did not read every word of the 78-page document here, but I did a search for the words perimeter and fencing and perimeter fencing, and it appears to me that things under Threat Level 1 do not require a fence around the entirety of the base, only around certain buildings on the base. Threat Level 2, I believe, required a perimeter fence around the entire facility, as did Threat Level 3. So the answer to the question, are military bases supposed to have fences on their property? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, but it doesn't have to be around the entire perimeter. Only certain parts of the property must be fenced in. So, yeah, it's one of those things to where basically they write the rules in such a way as to where they can charge people with stuff of, you trespassed onto our property even though you didn't know that this was our property or that this was prohibited, and now give us money. And it's an absolute shame that it exists in such a manner, but, it currently is what it is, and I hope that it changes sooner rather than later. And that brings me to the final question that will most definitely take up the rest of the show. The question is, for your next AMA, perhaps with a link over to a story titled, and give me 1 second to pull this back up, is there a link between anarchism and communism? And, the short answer before I get into the article here from MajorMindJob.com is that at one time there most definitely was a strong link between people calling themselves anarchist and people wanting a communist government. But now that is not the case so much. There certainly are people that would call themselves anarcho-communist, but the vast majority of people that support what would be considered, real anarchy, meaning no coercive rulers, they absolutely are not in favor of communism. Again, that's, my perspective there based on, what I have actually experienced and what I know of people that use the term anarchist to describe themselves. And you may have heard people describe me that way. That's not a term that I necessarily use to describe myself. I would say that the term kind of fits, but I prefer using the term voluntarist or libertarian, because libertarian actually encompasses the voluntarist label, the anarchist label. And I know there are some people that want to say that anarchism is not inside of libertarianism, but it most certainly is. Because in true anarchy, no one is forcing anyone to do anything. And let me just begin jumping into this article here, again, from MajorMindJob.com. And actually, the title of the article is, Does Anarchism Lead to Communism? Not Is There a Link Between? And, well, I'll get into the article and my response when we come back here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, episode number 295. just a few away from launching version 4.0. Stay tuned.
In 1999, Darryl W. Perry began a search for traditional values which led him down a path to the ideas of liberty. He tells the story in A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty. Of the book, Dr. Brian Sovereign says, sometimes it's funny, and sometimes I think it's crazy, but it's always authentic. Find A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty by Darryl W. Perry on Facebook, read reviews on Amazon, ask for A Rebel's Journey wherever books are sold, or visit arebelsjourney.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Jumping into the article, is anarchism a philosophy implanted into our society by a group of very powerful people for the purposes of making this country weaker so that they can eventually be taken over by a communist government? The other night, the author of this piece writes, and should point out that this was written back in October of 2014, so it might be a little dated in the references. But he says, the other night we had a very interesting guest on our podcast, Dr. Joseph Farrell. Farrell is the author of more than 22 books covering such fields as Nazi Germany, sacred literature, physics, finances, the Giza pyramids, and music theory. Towards the end of the program, I asked him what he thinks about anarchism and if he believes there is any possible link to communism. His answer was very fascinating, to say the least. And then there's a link to a video that winds up having his answer, and then they say, click here for the full 2-hour video or 2-hour interview, and I will not be doing that. Why do I bring this up? He then asked. Many people over the internet have been debating this topic for some time now, and it's a hot topic lately. A few years ago, I watched a video that attempts to show the difference between a monarchy, oligarchy, democracy, republic, and anarchy. The narrator in the video claims that most of our founding fathers intended the country to be a republic, and that the word democracy does not show up anywhere in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, or any of the constitutions of the 50 states. The video gives a few examples of quotes by our founding fathers that harshly condemned democracy, warning that it always leads to despotism and tyranny. He claims that this is why our founders decided that this nation should be a republic as opposed to a monarchy, and that a republic is always in danger of turning into a democracy and then a tyranny via anarchy. And this is based on complete misunderstanding, really, of words. It's based on a complete misunderstanding of pretty much every word that was used here. The word democracy literally translates from the Greek to mean people power, meaning that the people have a say. The people make the decisions, not a small group of people. So it would be in opposition to monarchy or oligarchy, oligarchy being a small group, monarchy being a single person. So with democracy, it's supposed to be all of the people making a decision. Republic, a lot of people think that it means a certain thing, that it means, like the separation of powers sort of thing, and that's not actually what the word means. The word republic comes from the Latin res publica, which literally means well, I've got it in front of me here, of and or pertaining to the state of the public. Literal translation, the public thing. So it does not mean what people think that it means. People think that it has this special meaning of, oh, well, republic means that there's a system of checks and balances and representation and this and that and blah, 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 and freedom. But that's not what the word republic means. And if you actually look at the system of governance of most of the countries in the world, most of them will claim to be republics, and they all have, or the vast majority have, written constitutions, which makes them all constitutional republics. The Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. Yes, I know there's the word Democrat in there, but also there's the word republic. And guess what the people in North Korea have? Yep, that's right, a written constitution. And guess what that written constitution in North Korea says? It says that rights will be respected. I don't think anybody that lives in North Korea actually believes that. So the words that he's using of democracy and republic and oligarchy and monarchy, he might understand what monarchy and oligarchy mean, but he most certainly does not understand democracy and republic, are basically the Greek and the Latin versions of saying the same damn thing. He also claims that he saw a YouTube video that says that democracy turns into tyranny via anarchy. And none of those things even make sense in the order that I'm reading them. So what anarchy is, and I'll rehash this for people that might not be familiar with the term and think that the term means chaos, that would actually be nihilism. Anarchy means no rulers. And you can't actually ever have an anarchy because everybody should be ruling themselves, which would technically make it an autarchy, where self-rule. But I digress. So when you don't have anyone making the rules or anyone that is being a ruler, and that's, again, if I wasn't clear, anarchy means no rulers, not no rules. There would still be rules, and people would generally abide by them. I had a discussion last night with someone where they were asking about the non-aggression principle, and I said, most people in like 99-point-some-odd% of their daily interactions, they're completely abiding by the non-aggression principle. They're not just going around randomly assaulting people, committing acts of aggression. They're acting in ways that further the interest of themselves and everybody else. And if you were to just go around and start randomly aggressing against people, then you would not really be welcome in your area for too long, and somebody would ultimately wind up defending themselves and probably causing you serious harm. So, the claim that if we did not have coercive government, then, people would just randomly rape and kill and murder, it's absolutely asinine. Absolutely asinine. And also, you can't have tyranny, meaning that there's someone controlling everyone, if people are controlling themselves. So to claim that democracy leads to tyranny through anarchy is just a complete misunderstanding of the words. Let me continue with this article written by somebody back in 2014 claiming that anarchy is communism. He says, back then, and I think he means back when the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution, he says, back then the word republic used to mean a good thing. Like all good things, liberal, capitalism, etc., the powers that be have corrupted its meaning, changing it to mean something bad. It was intentionally done as a way to divide and conquer, and that was mainly started by the people behind the Fabian Society and the people behind the Woodrow Wilson and FDR administrations. A recent example of this manipulation would be with the Tea Party. At first, it was a great thing. Hundreds of rallies were going on all over the country. But its fame was short-lived after the media quickly destroyed its credibility by plastering Sarah Palin's face on it when she attended one of the speeches, making it look as though the simple town was the representative of the entire movement. They then, of course, capitalized on the racist minority who would attend the rallies but I feel it was Palin's image that finished it off. He writes, before I continue, I should say that I don't hate anarchists. I don't think they are stupid for being anarchists. Most of them have good intentions, and in fact, most people, no matter what their political affiliation is, all want the same thing in the end, freedom and liberty. We just disagree on strategy. And I will leave it at that. I will post the link in the show notes. You can read the full article at your leisure. And don't forget, every Wednesday I answer your questions, AMA at FPP Radio.